5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
You heard John Bachman, if you were listening just prior to the start of this show, mention newly released emails from Lois Lerner. She didn't release them, but newly released Lois Lerner emails show the disdain that she had for conservatives, calling them crazies. And John said he couldn't say the other word. You bleep out the first word that starts with A and add holes, and that's what she said. She referred to conservatives as a-holes and crazies. And that is devastating. If that doesn't beg for a special prosecutor to be put in place by this Justice Department, what does? What does? And we'll talk about all this during the course of the show with various guests on this very issue of the IRS, including with Lori Lowenthal Marcus, whose own group Z Street was some say harassed by the IRS. All right, folks, Ralph Reed is on deck, but first we're both going to watch this coverage of Hamas.
As I sit on the pavement with Anas, the ambulance arrived with young Mohammed's body. I want to go and see my cousin, he says. Sorry, you may never even have met Mohammed, but it's already time to say goodbye. This is a dirty war, and here in Gaza, of course, it's shaping up to be dirtier than most wars.
All right, folks, I show you that because, first of all, that report was about 3 minutes long on CNN. I saw it over the course of 24 hours, maybe 24 times, and may that little boy, rest in peace, and it's a tragedy. Don't get me wrong. But if you saw the whole piece, it was propaganda. It could have been done by Hamas. That's what I'm saying. Joining us now, as promised, is Ralph Reed, founder and chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Hello, Ralph.
How are you, Steve? Good to be with you.
Thank you very much. And I also play that because not only the Hamas aspect of the whole thing, but we hear so much about every injury and every death in Gaza, which again, it's tragic what's going on. I blame Hamas, but it's tragic. But Christians in Iraq, Christians in all over the Middle East, Christians in parts of Africa are being slaughtered every single day, and the media could not care less.
Well, it's a deeply disturbing situation, stretching across the Middle East into northern Africa and really parts all over the world. There's a war on Christianity being waged against radical Islamic terrorists, including ISIS, which is basically liquidating the Christian community in Mosul, which was the largest Christian population in Iraq when the Iraq War began in 2003. There were over 600,000 Christians living in the country out of a population of 25 million. Today, that figure is closer to 200,000 and shrinking by the day. Christians are fleeing their lives, having been given the choice between conversion or death. And we see what's happened in Syria, where radical Islamic terrorists have executed priests and burned down churches and so forth. You see what happened in Egypt under the Muslim Brotherhood, where churches were firebombed and assaulted and Christians were killed in the streets. This is a very serious problem. It's one that the Obama administration administration has been largely silent about and done little or nothing.
Absolutely. I've never heard this cross the lips of the President of the United States. I've never heard John Kerry talk about this. I don't believe I heard Hillary Clinton bring this up during her 4 years, and it was going on back then as well. So I could almost understand a media that doesn't care because the media has an agenda. Our government, our State Department. I mean, I had Bill Richardson on, of all people, who I disagree with on so many things, last week, and he said he would love to see the United Nations Human Rights Department and our State Department do less scolding of Israel and monitoring of Israel and more talk and action about what's going on with Christians.
Couldn't agree more. And, look, the State Department this week, I believe, on Monday, did release a report on religious freedom. It's an annual report required by statute. And they did, to their credit, say that in almost every corner of the globe, there are millions of Christians and those of other faiths who are forced to leave their homes because of their religious beliefs. That's a direct quote from the report. John Kerry did make a statement regarding it, and for that I'm appreciative. But I think it's got to be more than just issuing a report that very few people will ever read, and which, even more importantly, isn't going to have any impact on the policies of these countries that are engaged in this activities. What we need is the President of the United States to use the bully pulpit of his office to highlight this issue, and we need to put religious freedom and human rights for people of faith at the center of the conduct of U.S. foreign policy. And right now, it isn't. And I think about the only way to say it is that this administration is very good at coddling America's enemies and betraying America's friends. And we see the way that has unfolded in the Middle East, in the dispute in Gaza, and we see it in the way we've allowed Iraq to basically be threatened with a takeover by a radical Islamic caliphate. And we need a president who has a backbone made of spine and looks a lot more like Bibi Netanyahu and Winston Churchill than the current occupant.
Yeah, that would certainly help. What is your take on the President of the United States, who calls himself a devout Christian, and if he says he is, then he is. I have no reason to doubt that. But I just don't understand, and I say this all the time. I'm not Christian. I don't understand how a devout Christian who's the ruler of the free world, who has the power, has it within his power to have the bully pulpit, but also, as you say, through foreign policy, to influence these things, to help these people, and nothing.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it goes back to his view of the world and his belief that the United States has not been a force for good in the world. I mean, you remember this whole thing began in 2009 with him going to Cairo and trying to announce a new beginning with the Muslim world, kind of a Middle East version of the Russian reset. We're going to start over. And if you go back and you read that speech, Steve, and I really encourage your viewers to do it and your listeners to do it, because what he does is he spends a good bit of time in that speech apologizing for the role of the United States in the Middle East, apologizing for its role in the change of regime that took place in Iran in 1953, and on it goes. And I think when you begin with the premise that America has been an agent of maybe not as much, but close to as much evil as good in the world and its history, you start off basically saying that the projection of American power is not a force for good. And I think that's the problem. that's how you end up with a unilateral withdrawal of forces from Iraq when we spent hundreds of billions of dollars in U.S. treasure and no way to put a price tag on the American lives and limbs that were invested to liberate that country and make it a free country and hopefully an ally of the United States. The unilateral withdrawal from Afghanistan, the failure to reach a status of forces agreement with the Iraqi government, and now we sit by hopelessly as, really an al-Qaeda affiliate gets a safe haven stretching from the border of Syria to the outskirts of Baghdad on this administration's watch, and the only thing we can do is send 300 advisors, and I don't even want to think about what's going to happen in Afghanistan. And what happens is whenever you have this kind of radical Islamic rule, whether it's in Iraq or in Afghanistan under the Taliban, or what you see in those areas of Syria that are controlled by al-Qaeda type offshoots, is the brutal, inhumane persecution of the Christian community, and the administration and the U.S. government has got to start doing something about it, or I'm telling you there will be very few Christians left in the Middle East by the time a new president is sworn in January of 2016.
Yeah, Ralph, very, very well said. And we're going to keep on this, certainly, as we have been, because I just can't imagine how this is not dominating the news and the concerns of the people in this country the way it should. Ralph Freed, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks so much, Steve.
My pleasure. Founder and chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Ralph Freed, ladies and gentlemen. All right, this is fair game, certainly, for the panel, which is up next. You know it, you love it, the Malzberg panel, and it's coming your way on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.